Believe it or not, the UCP curriculum suggests that you need to know the history of Ubuntu releases. It explicitly cites names such as Warty Warthog and Dapper Drake. So let's review what's been released by Canonical, the corporate sponsor created by Mark Shuttleworth for the Ubuntu distribution. First, there are 3 GUI-based builds released by Canonical. Ubuntu Linux includes the GNOME desktop environment. Kubuntu Linux is designed for the KDE desktop environment, and Xubuntu Linux is customized for the XFCE desktop environment. There are also other releases from Canonical. Ubuntu Server includes a customized server kernel and no default GUI. Ubuntu Juice is designed for virtual machines. Yes, there are more Canonical releases. Ubuntu Linux is a GNOME-based version of Ubuntu that's limited to open source software. Ubuntu Studio is designed for users who need multimedia applications. MP Linux is a variant of Ubuntu released by a company also owned by Mark Shuttleworth. So strictly speaking, it's not a Canonical release. Canonical, the corporate sponsor of Ubuntu, releases each of these variants on a 6-month cycle. Each release includes a 2-word code name and a version number. The version number is associated with the release month and year. For example, the version number associated with the Hardy Heron release is 8.04. In other words, it was released in the year 2008 in the 4th month. I'll give you a few moments to review the following screens, which lists releases and their code names. Read them carefully, as these code names are explicitly cited in the curriculum and are therefore fair game on the exam. The LTS next to Dapper Drake and Hardy Heron stand for long-term support. In other words, Canonical supports these releases for 3 years on the desktop and 5 years on the server. Finally, there are the other releases based on Ubuntu Linux, also known as derivatives. Some of these derivatives include FreeSpire, released by the company formerly known as Lindows, and MythBuntu, which incorporates the MythTV applications for digital multimedia. Those are just a couple of examples. There are over a dozen other variants. But to identify the operating system that you work with, you'll need to be able to confirm the current release. It's documented in the etc/lsb-release file, or can also be found in the output to the lsb release command. As shown here, we have the contents of the etc/lsb release file and the output to the lsb release-a command, which confirms that we're working with the Hardy Heron release. Thank you, and on to the following video. Per the requirements of the UCP curriculum, candidates should know the locations and types of Ubuntu support that is available. We can divide the support systems into 3 different categories. Canonical, which is the company created by Mark Shuttleworth as the corporate sponsor for Ubuntu, offers subscription-based support. Canonical also includes additional support systems beyond their subscriptions. Finally, the Ubuntu Community is organized in a number of official and unofficial groupings, which we'll discuss in a later video. Canonical offers official support. Yes, for a fee. Desktop and server support subscriptions are available from www.canonical.com. Hey, Canonical doesn't make any money from distributing Ubuntu. They need to make money somehow, and their support subscriptions provide one source of revenue. It's similar to how Red Hat gets its revenue through its support subscriptions for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. But Red Hat Enterprise Linux isn't so easily available, at least not as easily available as Ubuntu. Yeah, I know there are rebuilds of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, such as CentOS. But those kind of rebuilds are not required with Ubuntu. There are additional support systems from Canonical, some explicitly cited in the UCP curriculum. Rosetta is the system for human language translation, which is part of Launchpad. The Fridge is the Ubuntu News site. Shipit is the system by which Ubuntu distributes CDs of its releases. The Freedom Toaster is a vending machine type system which serves as a local Shipit. At this time, the Freedom Toaster is available only in the Republic of South Africa. Of course, these support systems don't include third-party companies, blogs, Linux user groups, and more who offer help on Ubuntu Linux. But those third parties are beyond the scope of the UCP exam. A Linux repository is a group of packages with some common theme. Ubuntu software packages are organized in a number of different repositories. Ubuntu repositories are available for all Ubuntu releases. In other words, I'm able to install the KDE desktop environment on my Ubuntu Linux system. When developers talk about Ubuntu Linux as being based on Debian Linux, what they're really saying is that each Ubuntu Linux release uses the latest available packages from the Debian unstable repository. But that's just the start of the development process and a subset of the packages used on Ubuntu Linux. There are 4 major repositories associated with each Ubuntu Linux release. 2 are standard repositories. The Ubuntu main repository includes packages required for the standard distribution, and they are all available through some sort of open source license. The Ubuntu restricted repository is a matter of some controversy, as restricted packages have closed source licenses. However, these packages are key to the Ubuntu approach to Linux, specifically to an operating system that just works. For example, the Ubuntu restricted repository includes packages associated with closed source hardware. Common examples include video cards and wireless network cards. Packages in the Ubuntu main and restricted repositories are supported by Canonical. In other words, if there's a problem with packages in these repositories, developers employed by Canonical will address them. The other major repositories are known as Universe and Multiverse, and they parallel the main and restricted repositories. The Ubuntu Universe repository includes other open source packages. The Ubuntu Multiverse repository includes other packages where the source code is not available. Packages in the Universe and Multiverse repositories are not supported by Canonical. There are additional repositories available for Ubuntu Linux. They're associated with updates, which includes updates that incorporate major bug fixes, available after the final release. Backports. These include packages which incorporate features that are introduced in later releases. Security. The security repository includes packages that address security issues. Finally, there's one more repository associated with Ubuntu partners. For example, Opera, which is not open source, but is commonly used in Linux releases, is included in the partner repository. The Opera web browser is an excellent alternative to the Firefox web browser. Each of these repositories are associated with different Ubuntu releases. For example, there are unique main, restricted, universe, and multiverse repositories associated with the Hardy Heron release. Later in this course, I'll describe how these repositories are configured on a per-client basis. For a preview, look at the etc/apt/sources.list file on your own system. This video covers two topics, seeds and architectures. Seeds are the essence of automated installations. An automated installation can help administrators work with large numbers of Linux systems. One Ubuntu method, at least the one cited in the UCP curriculum, is pre-seed, thus the term seeds. An automated installation file is in essence an answers file. When loaded during the installation process, it answers the questions that would otherwise have to be answered with manual input. Like other Linux configuration files, pre-seed files are text files. To see the structure of a typical pre-seed configuration file, review the pre-seed subdirectory on any Ubuntu Linux CD/DVD drive. I've loaded it up on my media CD-ROM directory, and I see several pre-seed files in there. Let's take a look at one. And another. See how few lines there are in a pre-seed file? Well, those lines are instructions to the installation program. And since there are very few lines there, most standard installations require a lot of input from the administrator. But to review a more extensive pre-seed file, find the example-preseed.txt.gz file available on the CD/DVD drive in the doc/install/manual subdirectory. There it is. You can uncompress that file, or you can just use the less command. You have to remember to cite the file. And there it is. You can review the file on your own. As you won't see an Ubuntu installation during the UCP exam, that's as much as you need to know. However, if Ubuntu ever develops a certified engineer exam, and I expect they will, an exam to rival the Red Hat certified engineer exam, I fully expect a detailed understanding of the example pre-seed configuration file to be part of that exam. Now to the next subtopic, architectures. Ubuntu has a pretty simple official support for architectures. Official Ubuntu releases are available for 32 and 64-bit Intel and compatible CPUs. It's simpler than it was before. Ubuntu Server was supported on the Sun SPARC CPU architecture through the gutsy Gibbon release. Ubuntu no longer supports that architecture, at least not officially. This has simplified the Ubuntu development process, especially when contrasted to Debian's. Debian Linux, the developers behind that distribution, they have to deal with over a dozen architectures. But ports are available. Mark Shuttleworth suggests that every Ubuntu developer is also a Debian developer. In that mold, Ubuntu ports are available for a number of other architectures. In other words, they've been recompiled for those architectures. At this time, ports are available for CPUs based on the PowerPC, the HP RISC, the Itanium IA64, and the Sun SPARC architectures.